I thought peace was something you could buy with land and silence. Turns out it's rented, and chaos always comes knocking for payment. The day they built that bridge across my river, something inside me shifted. The ground didn't tremble, the water didn't rise, but I swear, the air itself started to hum with bad intentions. You're watching Tomato Tales, where every calm story hides a storm beneath. It wasn't supposed to be complicated. I live alone out here. 50 acres of red earth, pine wind, and a river that's carved its way through my life as long as I can remember. The kind of place where you can hear yourself think, and sometimes wish you couldn't. Then they showed up. Ridgeway Meadows. Brand new homes with matching rooftops. Fences so clean they looked fake. And people who believed a committee could control the weather. And at the head of it all, Linda Cartwright. Hair that never moved. Voice that could slice glass, and a habit of smiling like she already owned the land she was standing on. She showed up on my porch one afternoon, holding a pie that looked store-bought and a folder labeled Community Proposal. "Mr. Ross," she said, "we'd love to build a bridge across your river. It'll make everyone's life easier, yours included." I remember staring past her at the water glinting in the sunlight, wondering why she needed my river when she already had roads of her own. But she had all the right words. Eco-friendly design, county approved, fully funded by the association. Even offered to let me use it, said it'd benefit both sides. My lawyer, Robert Lane, said the contract was clean. No tricks, no fine print. So I signed. Construction started within weeks. The sound of drills and hammers filled the valley. They cut into the banks, poured concrete, raised steel, all in the name of progress. And when it was finished, it wasn't just a bridge. It was a stage. They threw a whole celebration. Ribbon cutting, cameras, speeches about unity and growth. Linda stood in the middle, scissors flashing in the sunlight, smiling like she'd just crowned herself Queen of Redfield County. I stood back by my fence, watching them cheer for a bridge that didn't belong to them. Not really. Because I already knew what they didn't. Nothing built on my land ever comes without a price. I just didn't know that price would come wrapped in iron. Staring back at me from my porch. They say danger knocks. Mine smiled, handed me a gift, and called it neighborly. A week after the bridge ceremony, Linda Cartwright pulled into my drive again. Same perfume, same politician grin, no folder this time. "Just a token of appreciation," she said, holding a 2-foot-tall iron owl, wings spread, glass eyes glinting in the sun. "It'll look perfect on your porch." I should have felt grateful. Instead, I felt observed. But I took it anyway, too polite, too tired, too unaware of what she'd just planted in my life. I set the thing beside my old rocking chair. Heavy, solid, harmless. Or so I thought. Days passed. The bridge buzzed with traffic. Delivery vans, HOA trucks, even school buses. I told myself it was progress. I even used it a few times. It shaved 15 minutes off my winter haul route. Maybe I thought this could actually work. Then one Thursday, a black SUV slid up to my gate. Windows tinted, chrome polished, not a speck of dust on it like it had been flown in. Out stepped a man in a gray suit that didn't belong anywhere near mud. "Mr. Ross." His voice was velvet smooth. "Michael Brenner. I represent a group of investors looking to expand rural access points in this region." He handed me a folder, thick and glossy. "Your property is pivotal. We'd like to buy it. Double market value, cash." I laughed. "Not for sale." He didn't flinch. "I'd reconsider. Once community projects begin, ownership complications can get messy." That last word landed like a warning. When he drove off, the dust settled too fast, like even the ground didn't want his scent. That night I poured a drink and opened the folder. Zoning maps, permit drafts, a 6-month timeline that ended with a paved road slicing straight through my barn. The next morning, the owl's eyes caught the sunrise just wrong, too steady, too sharp. I leaned in. There was a seam under the left wing. Metal met metal with a hollow click. Something was inside. It wasn't just a decoration. It was listening. And I was about to find out who'd been on the other end. You're watching Tomato Tales, where curiosity isn't survival. It's bait. The first time I saw that shimmer in the owl's glass eyes, I thought it was the sunrise catching metal. Then it blinked. I froze on the porch, coffee halfway to my mouth, the world suddenly too quiet. I leaned in closer. Beneath the left wing ran a thin seam I hadn't noticed before. Too straight to be random. Too neat to be decoration. My stomach dropped. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just art. I called the only person I trusted with secrets that hum. Ray Henson, a friend from my younger days, used to wire security systems for government buildings. He showed up 2 hours later, toolbox in hand, grin sharp enough to cut suspicion. "Let's see what this bird's really made of," he said, setting the owl on my table like a surgeon prepping a patient. Screws came out. Wires spilled, and then silence. Ray pulled out a small black capsule no bigger than a thumb. "GPS tracker," he said, twisting another piece free. "And this," he held up a wafer-thin disc. "Microphone. Live transmission feed." He looked up at me. "Caleb, this isn't store-bought. Whoever planted this paid real money." I stared at the gutted owl, its hollow chest filled with the echo of my own heartbeat. Someone had been listening to my porch conversations for weeks, maybe months. Every word I'd said about the bridge, the land, and the new development across the ridge. It didn't take a genius to connect the dots. Linda Cartwright, the bridge, the investor Michael Brenner, with his perfect suit and his generous offer to buy my land. All of it clicked together like teeth on a trap. Ray shut the box with a grim shake of his head. "Signal's still active. You're being monitored right now. Could trace it, but I'd need bigger toys." "Leave it," I said. "Let them think I don't know." That night I opened Brenner's glossy folder again. Pages of zoning proposals and permit drafts sprawled out like a confession. One map showed a future road running right through my barn. Another labeled my land as a transition corridor. I didn't sleep. The river outside murmured like it knew. And somewhere beyond the ridge, I imagined someone leaning closer to a headset hearing me breathe. They wanted to own my silence. Instead, I was about to make noise. The owl's eyes had watched long enough. Now it was my turn to look back. You're watching Tomato Tales, where every whisper leaves a footprint. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always sound like shouting. Sometimes it's the quiet click of a phone line, a voice you thought you trusted turning hollow in your ear. I called Robert Lane the morning after Ray ripped that owl apart. My hands still smelled like burnt metal and cold coffee. He answered on the second ring. "Robert," I said, "you told me that bridge contract was clean." "It was," he replied smoothly, the kind of tone lawyers practice in mirrors. "Then why am I finding clauses that make me responsible for the entire damn structure?" Silence. I heard papers shuffle on his end, then the faint sound of him exhaling through his nose. "Those are standard, Caleb. Nothing unusual." "You're fine." "Fine?" I snapped. "That clause says I'm liable for any structural failure on my land unless I can prove the HOA's misconduct." "You didn't think that was worth a mention?" "Caleb," he said, a little too calm, "these things look scarier than they are. You're not in trouble." Click. I hung up before he could finish lying. That afternoon I pulled out my copy of the agreement and read it line by line under the kitchen light. The words blurred into a wall of legal camouflage, but there it was. Clause 32, subsection C. Written in gray ink so faint it might as well have been a shadow. The property owner assumes full responsibility for foundational integrity unless proven willful misconduct by the contracting entity. I'd signed my own noose. The longer I stared at those words, the clearer it became this wasn't negligence. It was orchestration. The bridge, the investors, the damn owl, they were all parts of the same puzzle. By nightfall, thunder rolled over the valley, shaking the windows like a warning. I sat on the porch, the dissected owl staring up at me, a hollow reminder of how deep this hole went. That's when headlights flickered across the ridge. For a heartbeat, I thought Brenner had come back. But the car turned down toward the new subdivision instead. Probably Linda, late-night scheming. I watched those lights vanish and whispered to no one. "You built your bridge, Linda. Now let's see how well it holds when I start tearing it apart." The storm broke open, wind howling through the pines. For the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt ready. If my lawyer sold me out, I'd find one who wouldn't. And when I did, the truth would tear their bridge down piece by piece. You're watching Tomato Tales, where every signature bleeds a secret. The next morning, I started making calls, a desperate kind of fishing, hoping someone, somewhere, could tell me what I'd signed away. By noon, I got a name from an old rancher friend who'd fought his own HOA battle a few years back. "Lauren James, best damn attorney in Redfield," he said. "Won't smile unless she means it." When she showed up at my place the next day, she looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Messy bun, dark blazer, eyes that could spot a lie 3 sentences before it came out of your mouth. She didn't shake hands, just dropped her bag on my table, opened a laptop and said, "Show me the paperwork." I slid the contract across the wood, still damp from coffee stains and regret. She read it faster than I could blink. Her brows furrowed once, then again. When she finally looked up, her voice was low but steady. "Caleb, this isn't a clean contract. It's a liability trap." My throat tightened. "Robert said." She cut me off. "Robert Lane should have caught this clause. Hell, any first-year law student would have flagged it. You trusted him?" 10 years, I said. "Hunted with him. Ate at my table." Her eyes softened just slightly. "Then he sold you out. And for more than a free dinner." Lauren started making calls right there, to county records, contractor registries, permit offices. Her fingers moved across that keyboard like she was conducting an orchestra made of secrets. Within hours, we had the first piece of rot. The construction company that built the bridge wasn't the one listed in the permit. The supply vendor had no physical address in Colorado, and half the listed inspection records were copied word for word from another project, one from 2 years earlier, in a completely different county. "This bridge wasn't built to code," she muttered. "They saved money on materials and forged the oversight paperwork. Classic HOA scam. You've been set up as their scapegoat in case something collapses." The wind rattled the windows. I could feel my jaw tightening. "So what now?" She looked up, eyes like steel. "Now we dig deeper. I'll subpoena the HOA's records, and if your lawyer took a dime from them, we'll bury him right beside them." That night when she left, the valley felt different, quieter but sharper, like the air itself was listening. The bridge still stood, but for the first time I realized it wasn't strength holding it up. It was lies. They thought they'd built a shortcut. What they really built was a trail of evidence, and we were about to follow it. You're watching Tomato Tales, where every cover-up leaves a crack. By the end of that week, Lauren James had turned my kitchen table into a war room. Files stacked like sandbags, legal pads filled with names I didn't recognize. She moved through it all with surgical precision, tearing into every detail of that bridge deal like she'd built it herself. "See this?" she said, pointing to a scanned inspection log. The document looked official, county seal, engineer signature, dates neatly printed. But Lauren zoomed in until the letters blurred. "This signature's a copy-paste. Same pixel pattern shows up 3 times. Whoever filed this didn't even bother to change the format." She pushed another page toward me. "The rebar specs are off too. The bridge was rated for 20 tons, but the supplier used material graded for 15. Cheaper, lighter, weaker. It felt like someone had dropped ice water down my spine. I'd driven my truck over that bridge dozens of times. It had held, but barely. Lauren kept talking, voice sharp and controlled. The HOA's trucking logs show their maintenance fleet making deliveries last month. 2 of those flatbeds weighed over 30 tons each. They crossed that bridge anyway. 30 tons, I echoed. They doubled the limit. Exactly, she said. And when it fails, and it will, they'll blame you. They already have the contract language to do it. She paused, studying my face. Caleb, this isn't negligence. It's a setup. They built a faulty bridge, overloaded it, and lined the paperwork so you'd take the fall when it collapses. I felt the room tilt. Every word brought back images of Linda's smile, Brenner's cold warning, the Iron Owl's lifeless eyes. All connected, all deliberate. Lauren stood, stretching her neck. I'm filing for disclosure tomorrow. Permits, invoices, emails, everything. Once we get their correspondence, we'll know who's pulling the strings. What about Robert? I asked quietly. She didn't look surprised. Already on my list. If he got paid to keep quiet, I'll find the trail. That night after she left, I drove out to the ridge. The bridge shimmered under moonlight, silver and silent. It looked solid, but now I could see the lie under every bolt and joint. A monument built not to connect, but to collapse. The air was still, the kind of still that comes right before something gives way. They thought the ground beneath that bridge was weak. Turns out it's their foundation that's about to crack. It happened on a Tuesday morning. The kind of morning where the sky looks too quiet, like the world's holding its breath. The storm the night before had left the air heavy with pine and wet soil. I was down by the river, checking for fallen fence posts when I heard it. A long, metallic groan, followed by a sound that still crawls through my sleep. A crack, sharp. Final. I ran toward the noise, boots sinking into mud. When I reached the ridge, I saw it. The bridge, my bridge. Only it wasn't standing anymore. 2 HOA flatbed trucks, both stamped with that smug Ridgeway Meadows logo, were half submerged in the river. One was nose first, wheels spinning in the air, while the other clung to the edge like a dying animal. Steam hissed. Tires whined. The water foamed with gasoline and splintered wood. People were shouting on the far side. A third truck sat at the bank, lights flashing. Workers scrambling down the slope. By the time I reached the scene, paramedics were pulling a driver from the current. His arm hung limp, blood streaking down his temple. The other guy sat in shock, staring blankly at the wreckage like he couldn't believe gravity still worked. Then came the sound I hated most. Linda's voice. She marched straight down the embankment, white coat spotless despite the mud, phone in one hand, rage in the other. "This is a disaster," she barked. "What the hell happened here?" I opened my mouth, but she turned on me first. "You said this bridge was safe, Caleb." I stared at her, stunned. "Me? You built it." Her eyes flashed. "On your land. Which makes you legally responsible for the structure's stability." She yanked a folder, of course she had one, from her bag and waved it like a weapon. "Clause 32, subsection C. Look familiar?" The words hit harder than the thunder. I didn't need to read it. I'd already memorized the lie. She wasn't finished. "We'll need a formal investigation, of course. But early assessments suggest the foundation failed. Your foundation." She turned, barking orders at rescue crews like she owned the law itself. I stood there, boots soaked, hands shaking, watching the river swallow everything I'd been tricked into signing away. $1 million in damages, she'd said, and every cent pointed at me. The bridge didn't fall by accident. It fell by design. And soon so would the people who built it. By the next sunrise, every news station in the county had my name on it. Local landowner liable for bridge collapse. They made it sound like I'd bulldozed the thing myself. The footage showed twisted metal, flashing sirens, Linda crying on camera, always at the perfect angle. Like she'd practiced it. But while the world pointed fingers, Lauren James was already sharpening hers. She showed up at my ranch before breakfast. Trench coat soaked from rain, phone glued to her ear. "Caleb," she said, slamming a stack of papers on my table. "They've filed a lawsuit. $1 million in damages. Medical, structural, community harm, the works. I leaned back, half laughing. They built it, overloaded it, destroyed it, and I'm the one being sued. She didn't laugh. Welcome to modern justice. But don't worry, I filed our counterclaim an hour ago. She flipped the stack open. Fraud, misrepresentation, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and reputational damage. We're going on offense. That's when she told me what she'd found overnight. The construction firm the HOA had hired, Everline Contractors, didn't exist anymore. The business was dissolved 2 months after the bridge was finished. The steel supplier listed on their invoices, a shell company out of Nevada, registered to the same P.O. box as Linda Cartwright's sister, and the inspection certificates that supposedly cleared the bridge? Digitally forged, copied from an unrelated project 2 counties over. Lauren smirked. They tried to play God with paperwork. Now we'll make them answer to the fine print. She wasn't done. She had already tracked down one of the bridge workers, Danny Vega, a guy fired mid-project for asking too many questions about the materials. He agreed to testify, said the rebar was thinner than code, and the concrete had been watered down to save costs. Lauren pulled a photo from her folder, Danny holding a piece of cracked rebar in his hand. This, she said, is Exhibit A. For the first time since the collapse, I felt the weight in my chest lift just slightly. They'd taken my land, my peace, and my reputation. Now I had something of theirs. Proof. Lauren gathered her things, tucking papers into her briefcase like a soldier reloading. Tomorrow, she said, we start digging into their financials. If there's money missing, we'll find it, and follow it straight to her. I nodded, watching her drive off through the fog, headlights cutting through the gray. The bridge was gone, but the real war had only just begun. They'd buried their crimes in contracts and concrete, but we'd just found the cracks, and the truth was seeping through. You're watching Tomato Tales, where every lie eventually hits daylight. The deeper we dug, the louder the truth got. By the end of that week, Lauren James had enough data on her laptop to start a small revolution. Caleb, she said, flipping her screen toward me, take a look at this. On it, rows of transactions scrolled down like a confession written in numbers. Wire transfers, shell accounts, unexplained reimbursements, all leading back to Ridgeway Meadows HOA. $500,000 labeled as structural assessments, she said, tapping the screen. Except none of these firms actually exist. They're ghost companies. Who's behind them? I asked. Lauren's finger hovered over one entry, a payment made 6 weeks before the bridge collapsed. Cartwright Development LLC. She looked up. Linda's husband's company. She's been moving HOA funds into her family's account for months. The sound that came out of me wasn't quite laughter, more like disbelief trying to escape my chest. She built that bridge to fail, Lauren continued. The collapse gives her the perfect narrative. Shift blame to you. File for insurance under the HOA, and walk away with a payout. It's fraud dressed as tragedy. The more she explained, the clearer it became. Linda had orchestrated the whole thing. The contract, the fine print, even the owl. A surveillance trap to monitor me. Make sure I didn't uncover her setup too early. Lauren leaned back, exhaustion pulling at her face. I've also been talking to one of their accountants, a guy named Peter Laird. He's ready to come forward. Says he's got internal emails proving she diverted funds for personal gain. That name stuck with me. Why's he talking now? I asked. She shrugged. Because he knows once this hits court, he's either a witness or an accomplice. We arranged to meet Peter at a diner on the outskirts of town that night. He showed up nervous, eyes darting, hands trembling as he slid a flash drive across the table. Everything you need is on there, he said quietly. Emails, bank statements, contracts. I'm done being their cleanup crew. When we left, the rain had started again. Steady, cold, deliberate. Lauren tucked the drive into her coat pocket like it was dynamite. This is it, Caleb. With this we can bury them. As we drove back, headlights sliced through the darkness. But in the rearview mirror, a pair stayed behind us, same distance, same speed. Too close to be coincidence. Lauren glanced back, jaw tightening. They know. I gripped the wheel harder. Then they'll find out what happens when you corner the wrong man. The bridge was just their first collapse. The next one would have Linda's name written all over it. You're watching Tomato Tales, where greed always builds its own ruin. I didn't sleep that night. The rain never stopped, and every time headlights swept past my window, I thought they'd come for that flash drive. By morning, Lauren called. Her voice was tight, lower than usual. Caleb Peters gone. I sat up fast. Gone? Didn't show up for work. His phone's off. Car still in his driveway. His neighbors said 2 men in a black SUV came by around midnight. No plates. The same kind of SUV Brenner drove. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. That flash drive, the one Peter had given us, was the only thing keeping this case alive. If they knew he'd flipped, they'd come for it next. Lauren met me at the ranch an hour later. Mud streaked her heels, hair frizzed from the storm, but her focus was unshakable. They're trying to spook us, she said. But they slipped. I ran a trace on one of the fake company accounts Peter gave me. Turns out, the routing number belongs to Brenner's firm, not Linda's. He's laundering the money through investment channels. So Brenner and Linda are partners, I muttered. She handles the front, he cleans the cash. Lauren nodded. Exactly. But here's the problem. They know we have proof now. She pulled a small black SUV tracker from her bag. Found this under my car this morning. The message was clear. They weren't just listening anymore. They were hunting. That night we locked the flash drive in a fireproof safe under my floorboards. I sat by the window, rifle within reach, eyes fixed on the tree line. The rain turned into fog, swallowing the valley in gray silence. Somewhere out there, someone was watching. I could feel it. The same way I'd felt the hum of bad intentions when they built that cursed bridge. At 3 a.m., a light flickered across the ridge. A single flash, then darkness again. Signal, a warning. I called Lauren immediately. They're close, I whispered. Then we move now, she said. Tomorrow we file the fraud motion and hand that drive to the state prosecutor. If they want to bury us, they'll have to do it in broad daylight. Her words steadied me, but something in my gut twisted anyway. We weren't fighting a lawsuit anymore. We were fighting ghosts with bank accounts, and they were running out of places to hide. Peter's silence wouldn't last forever. One way or another, he'd resurface. But when he did, the truth he carried would bring the whole bridge down again. You're watching Tomato Tales, where every secret leaves a trail in the mud. 2 days after Peter vanished, Lauren's office was broken into. No smashed locks, no forced entry, just emptiness. Files gone, computers wiped. The police called it a targeted burglary, but we both knew what that really meant. A message. When she called me, her voice barely wavered. They didn't touch the cash box or my safe, she said. They only took the hard drives. Every case file, every recording. Her tone dropped lower. They knew exactly what to look for. That night she came to my ranch, laptop under her arm. One of the few that hadn't been stolen. I had backups, she said. Encrypted offsite. They didn't get everything. She smiled just slightly. But they think they did. Let's use that. We spent the next 48 hours rebuilding the case from fragments, emails, bank statements, photos, every piece of evidence that tied Linda Cartwright and Michael Brenner to that fraudulent bridge deal. But by the third night, the pressure started to show. Lauren looked like she'd aged 10 years. Her hands shook when she typed. You should leave town for a few days, she told me. They'll go after you next, I shook my head. This is my land, my fight. The rain had stopped, but the air outside felt like thunder was still waiting for permission. We were almost ready to file when headlights washed across my porch again. A black SUV, the same one from before, he's crawled down my drive. Lauren froze. Don't move. The car stopped 20 yards away. The engine idled for a long minute before the driver's window rolled down. And there he was. Michael Brenner. Suit still perfect, eyes still empty. He smiled, the kind of smile that says he's already written your obituary. Mr. Ross, he said through the rain-specked window, I'd advise you to stop. You've caused enough trouble. Drop this and you'll keep what's left of your land. Lauren stepped forward before I could stop her. You think threats will save you in court? Brenner laughed quietly. Who said anything about court? Then he drove off, tires kicking up gravel like sparks. We stood there in silence. She turned to me, voice trembling just once. He's desperate. Desperate men make mistakes. That's when we strike. Inside, I locked every door, loaded the rifle by the window, and waited. Because now the storm wasn't coming from the sky. It was coming from them. The bridge had collapsed under their lies. Now it was time to bring the people behind it down the same way, piece by piece. You're watching Tomato Tales, where every warning comes before the fall. Morning came heavy with fog, like the valley itself was holding its breath for what was about to happen. Lauren and I had everything ready. The flash drive, the financial records, the testimony drafts. Weeks of fear, anger, and sleepless nights had built to this single morning, court filing day. We drove into town in silence. The courthouse steps were slick with dew, the kind that sticks to your boots and slows you down just enough to make you think. When we reached the clerk's office, Lauren slid the documents across the counter without hesitation. Her voice was steady. Fraud, embezzlement, and willful negligence by the Ridgeway Meadows Homeowners Association and its officers. The clerk stamped it. The sound echoed through the marble hall like a gunshot. It was done. By noon, the news had spread. Local reporters circled the courthouse like flies on a wound. And at the center of it all, Linda Cartwright. Perfect posture, perfect outfit. But for the first time, her smile was gone. When she saw us on the courthouse steps, she froze. Lauren didn't hesitate. She held up the printed financials, her voice sharp as glass. You diverted $500,000 through shell accounts. You used public funds to build a bridge you knew would collapse. You endangered lives and then you blamed an innocent man to cover it up. Linda tried to speak, but the cameras were already rolling. She turned to walk away, but a reporter blocked her path. Mrs. Cartwright, he called. Is it true your husband's company received HOA contracts under false names? That did it. The crack showed. Her jaw clenched. Her eyes darted, not with anger this time, but fear. Behind her, Brenner appeared, face pale, tie loosened. He whispered something to her, but she shoved his hand away. In that moment, everything unraveled. The Queen of Ridgeway Meadows cornered in daylight. Lauren leaned close to me. We don't even need a trial. Public pressure will eat them alive. By evening, the HOA board resigned. Brenner's firm was under state investigation, and Linda Cartwright, the woman who once smiled through every lie, was escorted from her home by deputies before sunset. When I got back to the ranch, the air finally felt clean again. The river ran quiet, as if it knew justice had been paid in full. The bridge was gone, but in its place was something stronger. Truth. I sat on my porch watching the water roll past the stones and whispered, Peace isn't rented anymore. It's earned. The bridge fell, the lies broke, and the silence finally meant freedom. You're watching Tomato Tales, where every story ends the way truth demands it to. A month after the courthouse storm, the valley was quiet again. Too quiet, almost. No camera crews, no legal threats, no headlights stalking the ridge at night. Just me, the wind, and the river that had seen it all. I rebuilt the fence line where the bridge used to stand. The ground there still smelled like wet steel and diesel. Ghosts of what they'd tried to turn into my grave. Now it's just open space the way it should have been. Lauren came by a few days later. She looked lighter, maybe even younger. They froze all of Brenner's accounts, she said, handing me a folder. Linda's facing 3 counts of fraud and conspiracy. She's blaming him for everything. I couldn't help but laugh. Guess the bridge wasn't the only thing that fell apart, she smirked. Greed always collapses under its own weight. We stood by the riverbank, the water glinting gold under the morning sun. For a moment, everything felt normal again. Simple. The kind of quiet I'd been chasing since before the first nail went into that cursed bridge. "I'm leaving the firm," she said suddenly. "Cases like this take too much out of a person. Thinking about heading north for a while, maybe starting my own practice someday." I nodded. "You've earned it." She looked at me for a long second before heading back to her car. "You too, Caleb. You didn't just win this case. You survived it." After she left, I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, staring at that same stretch of river. The iron owl still sat on the table beside me. Empty now, hollow but harmless. I kept it as a reminder. A reminder that peace can turn poisonous. That neighbors can build bridges just to cross into your destruction. And that sometimes doing the right thing means standing alone on your side of the water. The headlines moved on, as they always do. Ridgeway Meadows got new board members, fresh paint, and another promise that things would change. Maybe they would. But the land doesn't forget. As the evening light faded, I watched the river catch fire under the sunset. The same current that once carried debris and lies now carried nothing but reflection. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Real peace. Not rented, not borrowed. Just mine. And if chaos ever comes knocking again, well, I've learned to answer. That's how it ended. Not with another bridge, but with the truth finally standing strong. You're watching Tomato Tales, where stories aren't just told, they're remembered.